Okay, so I've got a 6 Plus here that's come in for what's called touch disease. Now, this is probably the most common repair that I get these days. So, on the 6 Plus and the iPhone 6, you've got these two parts on the back of your motherboard that are called touch ICs. One's referred to as a Mason IC and one's referred to as a Cumulus IC. Now, where these sit in your frame is right in the middle of your power button and your lock button, which are obviously weak points in the frame because that's where your cutouts are. So that's basically where the phone is more likely to bend. Now, with these, so these are your touch ICs here, right? So that's your Mason IC, and your Cumulus would go here. I've already taken it off just to show you the balls underneath. But underneath these chips, you have these tiny little solder balls. Now, you can imagine basically if that ball wants to bend, those solder joints are going to crack. Because that chip is naturally going to want to stay straight, but the base it's sitting on is bending. So the weak point here is the actual solder joints, so you end up with microscopic fractures in them. Now, the best way to replace, you can re-ball the ICs, so you can basically just replace all those balls, or you can replace the entire IC together. Now, I prefer to just replace the IC. I just think it's more time efficient. And I don't know, I've had good results. So, if you've got touch disease on a 6 Plus, you will notice that your touch might be intermittent until you say slightly bent the phone, or you dropped it one day and your touch completely stopped working, or the most common issue is, or the most common symptom is a little grey flickering bar at the top of your screen. So they're all symptoms of touch disease, but give or take, you may have a broken screen, so it could just be the screen that's stopping the touch as well. So if you do a screen repair and then you notice you've got those symptoms, or you've still got the same symptoms, it obviously rules out the screen, given that you know the screen is good. So I'm going to do a touch IC replacement on video today to show you how it's done, to show you what's involved, to sort of give people an idea of what actually goes, or the cause of the problem. Now, the most common issue for touch disease is what's called M1 fracture. So under that big black chip there, which I'm going to take off now, there is a pad at the top left corner that is known for fracturing. So I'm not expecting to see it to be for it to be physically visible, but we know that that is one of the very common pads that actually pull or come off the board during removal. So once this comes off, I should be able to give you a good look at what I'm talking about. So, there we go, blew off. Now, so you can see the M1 pad is actually missed. You can see all these others have got balls on them except for that one, and as well as this one down here. So these pads here are typically the ones that separate or oxidize, as well as these ones up here. So that's pretty obvious from that removal. So I'm just going to replace the ICs. I don't really bother about reballing. For the sake of the IC, this IC is like $7 or $8, whereas you can reball it for like 3 or 4. I don't really see the point in spending the time to do that. I would just much rather put a new IC on. So, if I make that a bit clearer for you, sorry. So what I want to do is basically use a soldering iron to level out and basically make new balls, or tiny small balls on this board, so that when I get the new IC, it's complete. I need to make sure that it's completely level with nice fresh solder joints. Now, of course I've got the wrong tip. Now, you will find a lot of shops might address this by just heating those ICs up, which, I mean, some people say it works, some people say it doesn't. I don't know, it's not the way to do things. It's not how soldering should be addressed. So you should be replacing the solder, replacing the IC, and then you just know that you've done everything properly, I guess. By just heating it up, you're not really addressing the whole oxidization process. You may reconnect the actual fracture, but the solder's still oxidized and it's still bad. If you've got an M1 fracture where that pad at the top left there has actually separated from the board, like, it's not putting a just putting a heat gun to it isn't going to solve that. It's not going to fix anything. Oh. Okay, so I'll just wait for my iron to heat up before I go any further, and we'll get our new touch ICs. So there's our Mason. And the Cumulus. So, I mean, I always check these before I actually go and put them on the board as well, because depending on who you buy them from, sometimes you're not actually getting a new IC. A lot of the time they're pulled from another board, reballed, and then resold. These look okay though. They look pretty new. I'm pretty happy with them. Wow. Obviously I don't want that under there. Yeah, they're good. Now, a good tip is, what I actually do is I will put a little bit of solder on my heat gun, but I will actually heat it with about 200 degrees with a heat gun. So this sort of helps you compensate for thermal mass through the board, and it makes the soldering job much smoother. So you should I can get that so that you guys can see that really well. So you can see how nicely that's... See how that top pad doesn't really want to play? So see that pad that just lifted up? That is what's called an NC, so not connected. Doesn't really matter, it's not going to do us any harm. Preferably you wouldn't want that to happen, but it's not going to do anything. That pad literally does nothing. Now Cumulus has a bigger thermal mass, so, well sorry, the pads underneath it have a bigger thermal mass, so having a heat gun for this is so helpful and it makes the world of difference. You'll notice your touch IC, like if you're a repairer watching this, you'll notice your touch IC jobs will just, you know, instead of taking 15-20 minutes to do this, you're gonna like punch these out so quick it's not funny. So we lost another NC, actually two of them off the Cumulus. Crap! But that's not that bad, we'll be right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to check that anyway. I know they're NC, but I'm going to show you so that you understand. So you understand what I'm talking about. If I get... my computer unfreezes. Okay. So we bring up the 6 Plus. And ZXW crashes. Beauty. So we choose our phone, iPhone 6 Plus, and I will choose the back of the board because that's obviously where I'm working. And if we zoom in up here to our Touch IC area, so right now we're looking at the Cumulus. Oh shit, hold on, I'll get this so you guys can see it. So that's our Cumulus IC. Now the third pad across from the top is the one that I'm missing. And if I click that, you see down the bottom right there it says NC, so not connected. Now the next one up is what, the third, fourth, fifth row up, third across. So 3, 4, 5, third across, NC. And on our Mason, the other pad that I pulled was the third row up, second across. NC. Alright, cool. So M1, if I can zoom in, when I was talking about the M1 pad, I meant this one here that actually goes off to that little vibe point there. If I can show you, so we're talking about this pad here. Comes down to here, and typically, yeah, that pulls, so then you'll have to put a wire from here to there, and it becomes a painful job. But we didn't pull it in that case, so I pulled a lot of NC pads. Now, because the NC pads aren't connected to anything, they tend to pull off the board quite easily. Nothing to worry about. I mean, you wouldn't choose for it to happen, but we'll be fine. Okay, so back to the touch ICs. Now I'm going to clean all this flux off, check all my pads, make sure they're all good, and then we will put the new ICs on. Okay, so I actually pulled 2 pads there. So you can see here and here we're missing 2 pads. So if I check those, oh wait, I'll get you up here. So we're missing these 2 pads, but they're both NC. Thank God. Get my toothbrush. That'll do. Right. So first I'm going to do cumulus. Now cumulus, we know the writing faces down. Now, if you see that little dot at the top left corner? That's basically to let you know the orientation of the chip. So you don't go putting it on backwards and yeah, and you get all sorts of problems. But now I don't want a lot of flux. You find if you put a lot of flux on, it's going to make that chip float around, move around, do all sorts of crazy things, and it'll be painful to put on. So I like to be really anal about how much flux I use. In my experience, that's just how I've had better success, but okay, so Mason IC is on, and we'll cover up the PMIC. Get the heat gun warming up. So I'm just making sure that chip's straight, and it looks pretty perfect actually. Now you'll notice once this gets to the right temperature, that chip will actually wiggle and it'll snap into place. Okay, so we're going in for the heat. Whoa. So I melted my mat. I'm really good at doing that. So watch the IC. You notice all the flux around it will sort of start to pulsate. But see that snap? And there we go. See that snap into place? A little bit hotter and I'll let go. And that's perfect. Now, I'm going to let that board cool down for a minute. And then we're going to come back and we're going to put Mason on. So I'll be back in a second. Okay. So our board's cooled down. I'm going to add more.
No, you can't do it with this one, mate.
More flux. Sorry, I'm like so overly anal about flux. Sweet, so we got the IC sitting in the right spot. Cover out the other parts. And we go to town. And again, just watching that IC for the wiggle. You'll see it move into place. See that snap? And now we can check on the side to make sure our balls look okay. You can't really see any cumulus, but Mason looks quite good. No bridge balls. Haven't bumped any parts around it. Everything looks quite good, so you can check on this angle as well. If it maybe lets me, yep, just. Yeah, it looks quite good. So when I plug this back in, after I clean it, we should have a perfectly functioning touchscreen. So just cleaning this flux off with alcohol. Another reason why I don't like using too much flux, it's obviously a lot less to clean off, so this board should be pretty near spotless and hopefully almost look factory. That's pretty much the desired result. I'm hopeless at making my scope focus, I'm sorry. Sweet. Alright. Let's see if we fixed it. Fingers crossed. Okay, so phone's turning on. When it's ready. And our touch is working. So you can see the number one. Hold on, let me get this up close. 2, 3. All our buttons are working nicely. So I'll go ahead and do further testing on that after the video, but yeah, that's the gist of touch disease. So you want to make sure that, obviously, if you've got a 6S, you want to make sure that you've got a good case on it, that you don't bend it. And I mean, they don't even have to be bent for this to happen. Like, this happens to 6 Pluses that are literally off the shelf. And I mean, Apple refuses to acknowledge that there's a design flaw in these, even though they went and fixed it with the 6S. Those touch ICs were actually relocated to the screen, so when you get a screen replacement, you replace the touch ICs as well, so you can't really get this problem. So yeah, that's touch disease.